All right.
Okay. Welcome back to the Spiritual Uplevel Podcast. I'm your host, Jeri Cristine, and today I have one of my favorite people here, Salena Moana. Salena is the epitome of feminine goddess energy. Salena, I know I have your bio here, but I'm going to share mine first. Salena, I don't know if I've ever told you this before. I told our friend Kim, there's so many people talking about like star seeds and these people that have this different energy that are here to up level the world, and I'm a little bit cynical and I'm like, yeah, you're cool. But of all the people I know, have all the people I've ever met, you're the one where I'm really like, I actually think that she is a star seed. Like, you're so incredible. And I even told my daughter, I wish you could meet my friend Salena because she is literally like the most loving, feminine, kind human that I know. And so I'm really excited to have you here to share this energy with our audience. So let me explain in your words who you are quickly. Salena is a mother of six who values living with deep intention, honoring her connection to divine feminine wisdom and inner knowing. As an ecstatic dance instructor and breathwork facilitator, she creates transformative spaces. She guides embodiment practices that awaken creativity and intuition, helping others reconnect with their authentic expression. And I think you should also add to that you are a very beautiful singer, and that creates transformation too, because I've experienced that before. So, Salena, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. I liked your bio much better.
Well, I think it is
Hard to
so true.
say.
And I think that probably, if I'm being honest, Salena, probably one of the reasons that I'm like so attracted to your energy is because it's so opposite from mine. I always have came from that masculine energy perspective. Like if I'm gonna be taken care of, I have to do it. So I'm like this. Yeah, I was always this like business type A, like ball buster, right? In every aspect. And when I started my spiritual journey, I just really wanted to change that and swing the pendulum back to feminine. And when I met you, I was like, wow, like that's the goal. And my first question for you is, have you always been that way? Or was there like a transition where you really started embodying and feeling comfortable in the feminine more?
Well, it's kind of like that thing where it's like you don't really know it until someone points it out. Like you're just
Yeah.
kind of, I think it was my husband actually when we were dating at the time. He looked at me and he was like, "You're like," he's like, "Have you heard of Ma Durga? She's like this Hindu deity who like has the 8 arms and she's sitting on the tiger." He's like, "You're
Okay.
her." And I'm like, "What?" Like I don't even know. Like so it took people seeing it in me for me to realize there was something that was really feminine about me. But, looking back, I'm like, I was always a very highly emotional, intense creature. So, and very deeply connected to my body and to nature. Like, as a kid, I would just sit in my tree all day, like just I was just very much this uh not a lot of thoughts going in my head when I would be like when I was alone. I just felt very, very in tune with like um I don't know, like I guess just looking back, it's like this, this well of inner knowing and inner wisdom that you can't really explain until it's reflected back to you, until people see it in you. So, and then that's the beauty of being in a relationship is people being able to reflect you.
The beauty and the curse.
Yeah, yes, that too.
Definitely. The beauty and the curse. Yeah, I mean, I wonder if like women are born with that inner knowing a little bit, because I remember having that as a kid. I was super connected with animals. And then through, I think, like trauma and the hardships of life, like really shut it down, you know?
Yeah,
And
We're taught to shut that down for sure.
Yeah. So you like that's your purpose, your mission is to help other people connect to their authenticity and their creativity and allow this feminine energy to come out and connect with it and embrace it. Talk to us a little bit about that. How do you do that? And
Well, as a kid, I've always been interested or always like felt very like excited about singing and dancing um and I feel like when I went to this concert once and I felt like I was like myself as a little kid. And I think it was the music that brought it out in me. And since it was a Desert Dwellers concert, um, and then after that, I just started dancing in my room again, like I would like when I was a kid. And I felt this like major turn on just about like this, like my body, like just feeling so connected to my body and feeling so confident and like loving on my body. I think that was like the first time I really truly felt connected to this beautiful feminine energy that we all have, and so dancing in my room again, like I was a little kid, like I discovered ecstatic dance shortly after that. And it was just all I wanted to do was to go to ecstatic dance. And I loved that when I went there, everybody was just dancing like in their own ways, like letting their freak flag fly, that like the bigger the better. And it was this space that I realized that I had longed for since I was a kid. I would go in my room and dance, so that no one could watch me, but there's some beauty in like being witnessed to and being in a group. Kind of like when you go to a concert, it's like there's more energy, there's more of that group energy, as opposed to just listening to the music in your room alone. But
yeah.
as soon as I like started reconnecting back to dance, I just kept really wanting everyone to feel the same, like feel the same in their body that I had like I felt like I had like unlocked this feeling of like it really is like ecstasy, like connecting to all the parts in your body, the divine parts in your body that just like make you feel alive. And I feel like it's your soul's expression of ecstatic dance is like connecting to like what your soul, what your spirit wants to express through your body.
Oh, wow. When you were talking about that, I was just thinking, I wish I felt like the parts of my body were divine and felt connected to that. And I think, again, through trauma and just life, I like completely disconnected from
Hmm.
some of those parts of my body. Like, I'll tell you, my children are adopted. I had early menopause. Well, after that all started and I started this spiritual journey, it was like, well, no wonder I hated having my period. I hated all of that stuff. I was in fear of getting pregnant all like when I was younger and, you know, not living the most godly life. And I think a lot of women do that. Like we kind of shut down from that and we're told it's not safe. It's disgusting. It's it's evil. You're a whore. Like all of these things that we disconnect from that divine. And now that my daughters are, coming into their maturity and puberty, I'm like this woman that's like, "Oh my gosh, you're connected to the moon. It's so beautiful. You have a portal for life." I mean, my girls are like, "Mom, shut up." But on the other hand, the other day, my husband, I don't remember what my husband said, and my oldest daughter goes, "Mom, what are men even for? I mean, what do they do? Because we have a portal for life." And I was like, it's like that it's already changing in our, family history here.
Love
But like
that question.
I loved it too, but like how do you like talk about that a little bit? Like how do you rec reconnect with that? I mean ecstatic dance.
So the disassociation that comes from trauma is so real. I I grew up, and I know a lot of you did as well. Grew up in a religion that, teaches you that any sort of pleasure that comes from your body, there's shame and intertwined with that. Like it's a shameful thing to feel pleasure. It's a shameful thing to feel sexy, right? I
Mhm.
grew up Mormon, and my mom never talked to me about sex. We weren't allowed to I wasn't allowed to even show my shoulders when I was a little girl. One time I wore this tank top that was in like this I don't know, like a secondhand bag that came to the house, and I put it on, and like my mom immediately looked at me and she's like, "Do you feel good in that?" And I'm like, "No." I'm like, so the disconnection that you have to your body is like, oh, it's just I remember when I was 19, I had just gone through the temple, and you have to wear these garments that cover your shoulders all the way down to your knees. And I had just lost like 60 pounds for like over the last year for my wedding. And I was like literally entering like maiden, where I just was like feeling super sensual in my body. I just bought some Victoria's Secret thongs, and then I had to put these garments on, and I was so angry. And I think that was the first step in me just like, this can't be right. Like this cannot be like the life that I signed up for, and throughout the years, like I just kind of lost interest in the church, but I tried to do the right things. But I remember there was this one time where I took off my garment top and I just wore a bra, because you literally wear your bra over the garment top. You don't you're like the bra doesn't even touch your skin. So I took
Wow.
off the garment top one day and I was just wearing a bra, and my friend could tell, and she was like, "Are you not wearing your garment top?" I'm like, "No." I'm like, "Don't you just want to feel like a woman sometimes?" And she was like, "No, no." And so,
Wow.
breaking out of that like that's a very intense example of like literally not being able to like enjoy your body. It has to be covered up,
Yeah.
right? Um,
Yeah.
and then add trauma on top of that, like that. It's just, I mean, that in itself is trauma, but I know a lot of us have grown up with, sexual abuse from family members, or just, physical abuse even. And so this deep disassociation with our body, we're taught to like not love these parts of ourselves. And it was definitely a journey. It was definitely a journey of self-love, of trying to reconnect to um these parts of myself that I didn't even really knew existed, like we talked about. I didn't see myself as this feminine person who was full of wisdom already, I think we don't even realize that because we look so much to like the outside sources to tell us what is the wisdom we need from something, we need someone to tell us what it is. But really it's all within us. And I think that the more that we ask ourselves questions, and the more that we develop a relationship with our body, like it's there. It's just waiting for us to to discover, and I can't really say like how I did it exactly, except for that I really, really wanted to feel love for myself.
Mm.
Because growing up, I was taught not to even like enjoy the way my shoulders looked, it's like, no, this is not your body. This is something to cover up. This is something like you shouldn't show your body or be connected to your sensuality. Otherwise it's gonna get you in trouble and turn a man on, And so
Yeah.
like when I left the religion when I was 30, I kind of just was like, fuck that. Like I I really just started like not wearing bras. And my husband helped me a lot with that too. I met him shortly after I left the church and after my divorce. Um and he was just like he helped. I think it's like that saying, like when you are loved, you start to love yourself. And
Wow.
he helped a lot in that. And I started to really just like I wanted to shed all of the things that were covering me. And yeah, so I think it's just developing a relationship with your body, and recognizing like these are like these beautiful vessels that we get to like experience life in. There's nothing else except for us right now getting in this earth, like getting to experience like a human life. I
Yeah.
heard this quote from someone that said, "Tell the angels what it's like to see a sunset because they can't experience it the same way that humans can." Like we
Wow.
get to have these embodied experiences. So the more that we can connect to our body, the more that we can develop a relationship with our body, the more we find those divine parts of ourselves.
Wow. That makes me even think like of the times where I'm feeling really connected just out in nature. And I can,
Mm.
when I'm like in that and like I said, feeling so connected and loved and free, I can like almost get tears from just looking at a flower, you know?
Mhm.
But when I'm feeling disconnected and shameful and stuff, then it everything doesn't look that way.
Right, we don't
Yeah.
even notice it.
Uh-uh.
I'm glad you brought nature up. Thank you. I think because we are nature. We are made up of the same material as this earth. And so when we feel that connection to trees, like we would never look at a tree and be like, ew, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true.
And
Oh my
so like
gosh.
looking at nature the way that, or looking at ourselves the way that we look at nature, like when we inhale the beauty of nature, like we are that, we are nature. So it's, yeah, it's just learning to love ourselves and learning to recognize that we are just as beautiful as the beauty and the nature all around us is I don't know, it's been a lifelong journey. So it's funny when people are like, you have so much feminine wisdom, you have so much feminine energy. I'm like, it's hard for me to see it sometimes, because I also grew up with this upbringing of I just didn't even know myself. It was always what was on the outside of what I should be doing. Like zero critical thinking until I was about 30. So,
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I can relate to that. And um, I'm sitting here wishing that more women knew that, like more women could experience that love for their bodies. Like I'm almost 50 and women my age and older are just desperately trying to look younger instead of feeling grateful for the body that's brought them to where they are today. And I starting to see more examples though of women who are standing in their greatness. Like one woman that comes to mind is Pamela Anderson.
oh
She's
yeah.
no longer
Um,
wearing makeup and she's like loving herself and being such an amazing example of that. And then I wish that younger women could know it too and know it sooner, and
yeah,
not wait until they're 30 to like actually love their body. And I think like you said earlier, we're taught that if we are in our sensuality and if we're loving our bodies, then we're going to get in trouble, because
right.
some man won't be able to control himself. However, I think the more that you love yourself, the less trouble you're going to be in because you're going to be standing so solid and so firm that a man like that isn't even going to come in your presence, you know?
Right.
'Cause-
And it's like sensuality has been sexualized, right?
Mhm.
Sensuality is not sexuality. And so being embodied and being confident in who you are as a woman doesn't have anything to do with the men that look at you. You know? Like that's not my problem. I'm not doing that for you. I'm doing that because I love the way that I feel in my body. And
Mhm.
so I just hate that message that it's like, you know, kind of dress a little bit more modest because we don't want to send the wrong message. It's like, I'm not sending anyone a message but myself. Like this is how I feel good in my body. And so yeah, I think that it's really important to you were talking about the maiden, or you were talking about like wishing that younger women could feel this way too. So there's three archetypes to, the feminine energy. It's maiden, mother, and the crone. And you were talking about Pamela Anderson. She is definitely in her crone phase. And the crone is like the balance of the maiden and the mother. So it's like that's when like women start to get a little bit older and they stop giving a fuck, you know? They're just like,
Yeah.
it's like they've kind of like integrated the maiden and they've brought her back into the picture because I think so easily we can just lose that maiden energy within us. And it has so much to do with trauma, you know, like and religious trauma, especially religious shame. Like, you know, don't connect fully to this maiden energy, this wild and free, beautiful, like passionate energy within us. And a lot of women are immediately like have to go into the mother role, you know, the mother archetype, where they have to, and it's a very important initiation as a woman. You know, we want to be able to take care of other people, not just ourselves, you know, and it's a very important role to have. But the beauty of the crone energy is like you've experienced the two, and now you can integrate them both. And you can feel like so many crone women, it's like in their crone phase, sorry, so many women in their crone phase are kind of like, you know, youth is wasted on the young, you know, because it's like, if only I would have known then what I know now, but also it's like, who gives a fuck? This body's beautiful, you know? So,
Yeah. I'm definitely in the crone phase too.
yeah.
That distinctly happened a couple years ago where I literally was like, I don't give a fuck. I love myself. I love my body. I'm like, you're gonna get to deal with it. But it's been so good though, because I feel so good. And I've had those exact thoughts like, man, I beat myself up for not being perfect when I was young. You
Yeah.
know, I was hypersexualized because I went that direction instead of like embodying sensuality. There was no sensuality. It was like very harsh and sexualized. And I beat myself up for not being perfect. And like I told you, I'm teaching yoga now and I'm loving it. I started my yoga teacher training experience when I was in my 20s. And I didn't finish it because I got too busy with real estate. Came back and finished it about 6 years ago. I'm just now teaching. Uh, and I am completely the opposite of what I used to compare myself to and why I wouldn't teach when I was younger. Always comparing. I had to be perfect or the best, or I just wouldn't put myself out there. And now I'm like, I'm almost 50. I can barely touch my toes, and I'm going to teach you how to do it. No,
I love that.
I actually like the more I love my body, though, also, I have noticed the less aches and pains I have, the more I can do with it.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
literally just from loving it. I used to have like a lot of back problems. And I just like let go of that shit and it came out of my body. I don't have the same aches and pains.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely noticed a difference in my connection to my body with yoga. And I was noticing my body getting super stiff after I turned 40. And I was like, fuck, this is not the end. So I think it's 40 is definitely like a turning point for a lot of people, like
It
to start,
is.
you know, wake up call to start taking care of themselves. And
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that I started getting into yoga because I don't feel that stiffness anymore. I feel like my body feels like just as young as it did in my 20s.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think yoga is definitely like a practice that is helpful for all women to be embodied for
Well,
sure.
my mom is almost 70. She doesn't do yoga, but she has told me someone older than her told her every decade gets better and better because you learn to love yourself more and you're
Oh,
becoming more authentic and more just good with yourself. And I really, really hope that more younger women can hear that and just start embodying it when they're younger. I think their life and the ability that they have and their health will be so much better by the time they reach our age if
yeah.
they learn to love themselves early, or if they never stop loving themselves would be even better
Right.
because we love
What a
ourselves
beautiful,
as children.
yeah, what a beautiful perspective. That was your mom?
Yeah.
Yes, because like every decade that we go through, we're always gonna like look at the one previously and be like, wow, I was so young, you know, like why didn't
Yeah.
I? So it's like just enjoy. I've heard from so many people that your 40s are the best, you know, like, and so I'm really just wanting to like be present with my 40s and just enjoy the hell out of them, because I know that when I'm 50, I'm going to be like, oh my God, my 40s were, I was so young then, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I can
So,
attest to that. I can definitely attest to that. I want to go back to ecstatic dance. So, ecstatic dance is one of those things that I can imagine some of our listeners are cringing because just the thought of dancing in front of people, and and letting their self be free is so uncomfortable. And that was me a couple years ago. I remember the first time I did it, I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. People are going to be looking at me. And then as soon as I started doing it and letting go of caring what anybody thought, oh my goodness. Like you said, getting into your body, it was like so blissful. It
mhm.
was amazing. Like, how do you encourage like women like me to just let it go and do it? And what's the transformation that you see in that process?
So whenever I facilitate ecstatic dance, I'm always so grateful. Like I'm always like, thank you for showing up. I know it's totally outside of your comfort zone. And it's funny because Kim is usually the one who gets all the newbies to come try it. And so it's really fun to watch women, especially, but a lot of men come too. It's really fun to watch these women like come and they're not sure about what ecstatic dance is. And then I start off like guiding, like trying to get you into your body, to the music, and kind of doing a body scan, and getting you out of your thoughts mostly. But it's so fun to see these women like have these profound experiences of feeling this connection to their body. And it's also kind of fun to see how they walk in super uncomfortable, or they're feeling very stiff and uncomfortable. And then by the end, like they're just feeling so grateful that they had that experience of connection. And I think, it's definitely something that is not in everyone's comfort zone. I've noticed the people that have the most hardest time with dropping into ecstatic dance are the ones that have been dancers before. Like, because there's no set choreography, you know? So the idea
Yeah.
of just like freestyle dancing is terrifying to some people. And so the way that I encourage people to drop into their bodies is this is your own inner experience. I mean, you can close your eyes the entire time if you don't feel like you want to be witnessed, like you can close your eyes the entire journey and just go inward into this relationship with your body, and start to, free these thoughts. Like thoughts are going to come up. Thoughts are always going to come up and be like, I can't move too sensual. I can't, like it would seem like I'm trying to draw attention. And just let those thoughts be there and recognize that they're these protectors that have, like, been with you your whole life. But this container is a place for you to move, and it's a place for you to connect to what you're wanting to like express. And the process of it is, it's definitely a practice. It's not something that, some people come and they haven't come back, they only come one time because it's too much. But it's something you can just start doing in your room, like it's not this thing you have to do with other people. I did it in my room for during all of COVID. So it was like my favorite thing to do was to just like turn on the music and dance. And it's the thing that I found that I love the most about it is how much clarity comes through. It's kind of similar to breath work, like you get into that space where you're feeling like you're returning to yourself, and all of these messages come through, and all of like these creative ideas, creative thoughts. And so it's really just a place for you to like go to connect with yourself, kind of like breath work practice, kind of like yoga. Um, and it also is just really fun. Like it's fun to feel like sensual to the music. It's fun to, like it doesn't have to be in front of anybody, but there is a beauty in doing it with a group, because you feel this sense of like we're all doing this together, and that feels really good, especially when you come back together and you share. And but yeah, it's definitely a practice you can start doing on your own.
I like how you said, though, that there's something about being seen in that group energy because I definitely started with my eyes closed the whole time. I didn't
Yeah.
want to be seen. And the most recent time I did it, I had my eyes open the whole time and I wanted to be seen and I felt confident and comfortable. And it was probably the most confident and comfortable that I've ever been in my body as an adult. Um, but yeah, I can imagine that like you have intuitions and things come through because you're letting go of stuck energy, you're moving your body, you're creating that clear channel. My kids and I love to do dance parties at the house too. It's such a fun way to connect and, get the giggles out and
Yeah.
just let that energy out and just really connect. It's really when you're in that space of being that free and that, I don't know, flowing, there's a level of connection that doesn't happen any other way, isn't there?
Well, if you think about it, like dancing and singing is a part of our birthright. Like our ancestors used to do it around a fire to celebrate, to express like our connection to God, whatever that means to you. But also like our ancestors used to do it to in a communal way, so like it's very connective. It's so fun to like make eye contact with people on the dance floor and and like feel that energy between the two of you. I love that you're doing that with your kids. I used to do that with my kids too. Now they're way too cool to dance, but
Yes, there comes that age. That's another thing we don't do now either, which is also very feminine, is singing.
yeah.
A lot of people will not sing at all in public because we're always comparing ourselves to the best of the best. We hear the best of the best on the radio, and we compare ourselves to that. And then, God forbid, I have a little crackle in one note, I'm done singing.
Right, right. Well, like I said, it's actually all of as humans, it's our birthright. Like we all have the capacity to sing. We all have the capacity to dance. Like it's just been culture that's decided that it's only like these people who have practiced and spent like devoted their entire like lives to practicing dancing that are the only ones that can be witnessed or the only ones that can share it,
Yeah.
singing and dancing. And really, singing is like one of the most beautiful ways to express pain, like to let go of pain. There's a song lyric where it says, "We sing to let go of all of our pain." And I think it's like one of the most beautiful ways to release energy. Like just sitting there and making like tones, like you don't even have to like sing lyrics. It feels so good in your body to release that. And our vocal cords are a way to release. So
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. You're such a good inspiration for me. I love it. Um, said you just said connection to God, whatever that means to you, and you've talked about this some, but talk to us a little bit about your experience with spirituality after religion, because I know that that's a really that's a rough transition for so
Mhm.
many reasons. But talk to us
I
a
think
little bit about like your journey and your experience with that.
Well, at first I wanted nothing to do with anything that resembled spirituality. It was very hard for me to just the idea of believing in something that, like just putting my belief in something new felt very difficult because, like that it couldn't be trusted. Like something that I had built my life on um was in fact, false, made up by some man. And so for a while, I just kind of wrote it off. And I think that's why a lot of people turn to like agnostic atheism, Um, but Q and my husband, and he was very much like was, he never let go of spirituality when he left the Mormon church. It was actually one of the reasons why he left the Mormon church was he saw spirituality as something completely different than what the Mormon church taught us. And so he was the one who introduced me to Hindu deities. And it's funny, Hindu deities are like you see those statues of like Ganesh, the elephant head. the woman sitting on the tiger, like all of those different Indian gods. And the way that I was brought up thinking about those was like, oh, those are idols. You shouldn't worship idols, any other idols besides God, right? But really what they are is they're these archetypes um that we can invoke these qualities within us. So it's like pulling out these qualities, like for instance, um, Ganesha is the remover of obstacles. So if we're like praying or focusing on this God, praying is also a tricky word after leaving religion. But if we're focusing on this God and we're focusing on the attributes of him, we're helping ourselves connect to this like remover of obstacles. Or Lakshmi is the goddess of abundance. We're calling in abundance within ourselves. And so we're not worshiping something outside of us. We're actually worshiping what we have already within us. And these deities are just a reminder of that. But I mean, that was fun. It was fun um to have these things that were, like these tangible things that I could feel connected to in a spiritual way, but still the process of leaving a religion, like, all these things like things that are sacred to you. The word sacred was ruined for me for a while. The prayer was like, oh, there's no way. How am I gonna like teach my children gratitude now because I don't have prayer anymore? Because, when we were little, we always said we were thankful for this, we're grateful for this. But there was like no way that I could pray out loud. It was just so hard because over and over in my head, I just had the Mormon basic prayer in my head. Like, how do you pray without saying, "Dear Heavenly Father"? But I
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was my own personal relationship with psychedelics. My first mushroom experience, I connected to this, like the divine part within myself. And I could see that all of these, religions are just connecting to the source of that we are one, the source of this higher thing, this higher creator. It's like the great mystery. We don't know why we're here. We don't know who created us. And so there's this one thing that's connecting all of us to that. And so I could just see language like dissolve. And it was like, you can call it whatever you want. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's this experience that I'm having right now is the experience that this person who had and created like an entire religion out of it. But it's our own personal experience of connecting to the divine, to source. And from then on, I could have conversations with my mom about Heavenly Father and about God, and I knew what she was talking about. And I know that, like, I'm like, Mom, all of this is coming from, I'm not telling her this, of course. She gives all the credit to God, but like, I'm like, all of this is coming from you, like, my mom is like one of the most like intuitive, magical people that I know, but like, she gives all the credit to God. And I'm able to have a conversation with her because I understand what she's talking about. She's talking to about that divine source.
Mhm.
And so, once I had my own experience of, like the experience that I'd been craving my whole life, like in religion, they tell you about all these men who had these experiences with God, and you're like, oh, when is that going to happen for me? And like,
Mhm.
so I had this experience with the divine, and so I'm able to see that within myself, and like that, whatever comes from that is my most authentic connection to spirituality. And so from then on, it's like, it's still a little bit uncomfortable for me to pray out loud, but I've gotten a lot better at it. And for me, it's like, okay, well, what do I want to pray to? And it's I've incorporated other cultures and other teachings that I've learned from different elders and different teachers. And one of my favorite ones is Great Spirit, is, you know,
Mhm.
Mother Earth, Father Sky, connecting to like the indigenous ways of thinking, the indigenous values, and really just finding what makes the most meaning in your life, because that's why people have religion, is they want meaning, you know. And so bringing meaning into your life is finding your own version of spirituality. So,
That's good. I think what people get hung up on, which you talked about, is that we're taught to worship something outside of ourselves and see ourselves as separate from it.
mhm,
And that feels safe because, oh my gosh, how could God actually be me? You know,
right.
how could it be inside of me? That feels scary and dangerous. And so we're taught that this is safe, and then that puts all the responsibility off of us. That's what I
Mhm,
always tell, that's what kind of started for me was if we so for Christianity, for me, I grew up in Christianity. And if we can only do things through Jesus, that takes a whole lot of responsibility off of us. It's
right.
always putting it out there. And Jesus told us in the Bible we'd be able to do the things that he did and more, and yeah, when I had a similar experience, with psychedelics and just realizing it's all the same. And I think that's what I just have known since a child though. Like if God ceases to be, we all cease to be because we just that's what we are made of. We're not separate from it. It's not like, oh crap, we're gonna die because God is gone. Like it all ends, whatever that divine creator is, and so that's what I connect to as well as divine creator, whatever is that great mystery. There's something that created this, and so in a way I see it as, I guess in a way I still see it as out there a little bit bigger than me still. However, I know that it is also me and it's in me. It's such an isn't it such an interesting process? Like you said, it's just like that journey of discovering what really has me, like what you really connect to. And if you, like you said in the beginning, connect to your body and begin to trust your body and begin to experience yourself as it was meant to be part of creation, it's amazing, it's perfect. You start having these experiences of what is truth
Yeah.
instead of being afraid of it and pushing it out away from you all the time.
Right. Well, there's that saying, it's a hermetic saying. I think it's like as above, so below, so within, so without. It's like everything that we're externalizing, like, oh, there's this great creator in the cosmos, but also we know that that great creator in the cosmos is a part of us. It's like we are made of what's out there. So that is also within us. And so it's this like beautiful way to have, as humans, like we are the only living things that can have a subjective experience. Like animals are just driven on instinct, but humans, we get these minds where we can make meaning out of things.
Mhm.
And really, it's just like, if you think of it in this like expansive, wonderful way of freedom, of being able to make meaning of your life in the way that you choose to, it's always going to connect to the source of what is like connecting all of us, which is love, right? We all know what love feels like. We all know what that, and so we are all connected by this energy, but we can also have our own individual subjective experiences of like like people have these spiritual experiences and you're like, wow, that's kooky, but it's like, but it's their own personal experience that's making meaning for their life. And I think that, I mean, that feels like the most beautiful kind of freedom, that we can have. And if you think about it, it's like clearly this whole structure of our society, of organized religion, of just, it was clearly made up by some man who didn't want you to have your own experience. Like it was clearly made up by this control of like, I don't want you to feel what I feel. I want to tell you about how I feel, and I need you to give up your authority and not have your own full experience, because it's a way of controlling, right? And so I mean, it's just breaking out of that, out of that construct of like, all of this is here for me. All of this is here for me, and I don't have to give my authority to anything else to tell me what to do. Because, like you said, it's kind of like a way to like slough off the responsibility, or just to not fully take full accountability for your own lives.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
If everybody had had an experience of that deep connection with God and that knowingness that God is within you, is you, the world would be a very different place because we wouldn't be able to be controlled and we wouldn't be able to we wouldn't have so much fear, I think.
And we wouldn't want to control anyone else. Like, I think
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
control would dissolve. Like, there
Yeah.
would be nothing but just love and respect for the other person's journey.
Yes.
I think of
Yeah.
how different the world would be that in that way.
Yeah. It's kind of like, and since we're on the podcast, I'm not condoning this, but often in these spiritual journeys and ceremonies, I come out of it thinking, I wish everyone would experience this. Want
Yes.
everyone to have this experience. The world would change in an instant. The, yeah, the constructs, the whatever it is that we live within that is controlling us would just dissolve. No one would have any need for it anymore.
And yes, I feel the same exact way coming out of these medicine experiences. And you also have to recognize that medicine isn't for everyone, and not everybody chooses that path. And like I was saying earlier, like you can choose like multiple different paths and they can lead you to the same realizations. And so I think it really just is about living intentionally and being on a path that matters. You don't have to go into medicine. You don't have to, I mean, they're great teachers. Plant teachers they'll show you who you are, that's their purpose. But then it's not the answer. You have to do the work. You have to do the work of, okay, I've seen this and now I know, but I think there are so many different ways to get to that same
Yeah.
point.
So I think what we're both saying is we're encouraging people to find a path and explore and find that experience for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing that I started my my spiritual path was this word intention. And living with intention, I really like decided like everything around me in my external life, I wanted it to have meaning. I wanted it to have some sort of intention. So I like cleared out my closet and I built an altar that day. Like I just remember like I read that book Moonology, and that's where I don't know if you've read that book.
What
It's
is
about
it
like
again?
Moonology. It's like feeling connected to the seasons, feeling connected to the phases of the moon. And one of the things they talked about was living with intention. And so I think that's been a really important part of being on a path is being very intentional with the things that I choose to invite into my life and the way that I walk on this path, it
Yeah.
invites presence. And I think if you're living in that sort of way, if you're living with like, being very mindful of um, what you're giving your energy away to, and you can't help but start to see things. You can't help but start to see um, clear messages of things that are good for you, things that are going to invite you into feeling more connected to the earth, feeling more connected to your body, feeling more connected to God, whatever. So,
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. I was just thinking, I don't know if I started out intentional, but I've become very intentional on the path, you
yes.
know, because
I
you
think you
can't help
can't really,
but not be.
yeah, you can't
Yeah.
really walk the path, like you're just like, oh, like where am I going? You have to be
Yeah.
intentional about it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you fall out of alignment.
Yeah, pretty easily too, right? So Selena, I ask all my guests two questions before I let you go. And you just mentioned a book, so maybe it's that. But my first question is, what is one book that you recommend that all of our listeners read that's impacted your life?
Um, I'm gonna say for the women, Women Who Run with Wolves by
Mm,
Clarissa Pinkola Estes. She is like, she is for the author is the epitome of like a divine feminine elder. And so just I like want to drink everything that she says and writes. She has a lot of books on Audible where it's like the Sounds True Audible where she's just talking. It's not really like a book, it's kind of like a TED Talk, you know. But her book, Women Who Run with Wolves, is one of the most important books in my that I've had in my adult woman experience because it she tells all these stories that connect to all these different parts of you as a woman, and it explores all these different depths of like of why we are built the way we are and connecting to our wild self and making sure we don't let that part of our soul die, that wild self. She compares women to wolves, you know, and like making sure that we are because that wild part of ourself is going to get fed somehow. And so she kind of like tells us how to feed, how to like just really enliven that wild self within us so that we can live like a full, vibrant life. And she's like, I think she's in her 70s and she's just amazing. And so I just she's where I learned all of like this crone knowledge from because I'm like I now I can't wait to be in that phase, you know, like because she just seems so like magical, you know.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's the book. Women Who Run with Wolves, and
that's
very,
awesome.
very good.
I'm going to read that. I actually think I have the book and haven't read it yet, so I'm going to read that book.
It's
um,
a lot to digest. It took me a while to read it.
yeah, yeah, but you've inspired me to get through it. Um, my last question, Selena, is what is one thing that you wish everyone in the world knew?
Mm. I wish that everyone in the world knew.
Hmm.
I wish that we knew how much of a game this is and how life is just this beautiful game that we get to play. And all of the pain and all of the difficulty is just a part of it. And that we chose this. We chose this experience because there's no other way that we could experience um, beauty and love and bliss and pain and heartbreak. It's all just like this wonderful, beautiful experience that so many spirits out there are longing to feel. And we get to be here. We get to be here to do it. And I think that when we see that within ourselves, that it's just this game that we're playing, you know, and all of it is just a part of this whole spectrum of the human experience, then we can like really choose our lives. We can really take accountability and like live our lives, you know, instead of being so, um, you know, so engulfed by the difficulty, you know.
Yeah.
But when we realize that this life is just this beautiful spectrum of all of all of the things that we're experiencing, then we get to be the ones who choose it. And I think that's what I want my kids to know more than anything is like all of it is a part of the experience. So like just be present for all of it and know
Mhm.
that the difficult parts are going to pass and know to like enjoy the beauty because like it's like the beauty is going to come and that so is the pain. And the pain is going to leave and the beauty is going to come back and it's all just this beautiful cycle of life and being present for it is the most important thing. Because we're always going to look back and we're going to be like, oh man, I missed that part of my life.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, that's it.
We're going to end on that because that was perfect. Selena, thank you for being here with us today. I have really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. Thank you for thinking of me
Of
and having
course.
me here.
Absolutely.
Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Same. Definitely.